Hi, welcome to the second part of the material of Introduction to ASP.NET Web Forms, which we call it intermediate part. This is the second edition of the material of this course, and my name is Farhad Aftekari. I'm the teacher of this course. Here are some courses links where you can find the material of this course based on these links. And here are some typographical conventions we use on the bottom of this slide. So if you confront them, each of them means something. So make sure to get familiar with them. And here is the difficulty level indicator. We define the material by three categories: easy, moderate, and hard. So it's up to the students how far they want to jump in this course and gain knowledge. And here is the slides framework where you can see how we divide the material for each slide. The title is here, the difficulty level indicator going to be here. We have a slide number, and this code can be used on this URL where you can replace this code with the code written on each slide on this part, and it directly sends you to the tutorial video of that certain slide. Here's going to be content and those icons that I describe, and then course name and section name. The content of this part of the material of the course is the following contents. We're going to talk about server controls, common properties for all controls, standard server controls, and then one by one we're going to talk about all of these server controls such as BulletedList, CheckBox, CheckBoxList, DropDownList, FileUpload, HiddenField, Hyperlink, image button, label, link button, list box, literal, panel, placeholder, radio button list, and finally text box. As we described in the previous slides of this course, ASP stands for Active Server Pages. Server controls are tags that are understood by the server, and there are different categories of server controls where you can find in ASP.NET and use them. You have standard server controls, validation server controls, navigation server controls, data server controls, login, and web parts. On this part of the course, we're going to talk about these three first ones. These are a little bit more advanced. After getting familiar with these three, students of this course can easily search and find out more about the other server controls. Here are some common properties for all controls you can get familiar with. So for each server control, you may confront these properties. Make sure to understand them and get to know them, so you're going to use them in the future on your projects and applications if you're using ASP.NET Web Forms. We have access key, which enables you to set a key with which a control can be accessed at the client by pressing the associated letter. And we have back color and fore color. It's obvious that we can select the color for that server control. And then we have border color, border style, border width. So you can also use CSS files, but ASP.NET Web Forms gives you ability to set these styles for each server controls. It's kind of outdated. I do not recommend it. I recommend you to try to gain more knowledge about using CSS for controls. But for the beginner level, it's quite acceptable, and you're gonna make the look of your application a little bit more user-friendly by using them instead of just using the default values. And then we have CSS class, that if you are using CSS files, you can enter the value of the class that you want to assign to your control. We have enabled, which enable that server control to be accessed by the browser, by the client that they are visiting and using. So if you have a button, then set the enable to false, then your users cannot click on those buttons on the other server controls also, if you are setting the enable to false. We have font that set the font name for that server control, height and width, which determines the height and width of the control in that in the browser. We have tab index. If you ever fill some register form or order form on the browsers online, you may see that when you press tab, one by one it goes to the other control for you to enter your values. So you can set the number as a tab index to have some kind of order for your elements on your form. So this is the place that you can set the property of tab index. And then finally we have tooltip, which enable you, if you move your mouse over that control, then that tooltip value will be shown to the user. And finally we have this visible property, which you can select it as a true or false. If you select as true, then it's going to be shown to the client and user, and if you set it to false, then it's going to be hidden, and your user, visitor, or client cannot see that server control. Here are the list of standard server controls that we're going to work with each of them individually, make familiar with them, the purpose of using them, how we can have access to the back-end side, how we can set the properties. So they are really powerful, and you can make applications, especially forms, with using them. Now let's set up the environment in order to be able to work with these server controls. First, we're going to create a ASP.NET Web Form as a blank project, and then add one web form page to our project, and then we're going to get to know about this directive of a page, and then the code behind property. Later, we're going to understand the concept of design and source window, and then work with toolbox and understand how we can build and run our project. So let's open Visual Studio 2013, create a new project. So I recommend you also use Visual C#, but if you're familiar with other programming languages such as Visual Basic or F# or the other ones, you can also use it for yourself. And here on the web section, there's Visual Studio 2012, where you can find this ASP.NET Empty Web Application. And make sure to select .NET Framework 4 as the version of the .NET Framework, and then type whatever name, location, and solution name that you want for this project. So here is our project here, and as you can see here, it's empty almost. So you can right click on your project name and select add here, and then new item. The full list of all of these items that you can add to your project going to be shown to you. So from this web section, you can find web form here, and then whatever name you want to give to this web form, you can type here, and then select add. So here is our first ASP.NET Web Form page. As you can see here on the first line, we have this derivative page. You can see it here. So the language that I selected is C#, and there are some other properties for this page being mentioned here. Here in the code behind property, the value, you can see that the code behind of our file is this code behind webform1.aspx.cs, as you can see here. So if you remember from the first part of our material of the course, this is the design part of the webform1 file, and this is the code behind file. As you can see, They are being divided into two parts, so it makes the job much easier for people to work in a group. And also, as you can see here, when you open webform 1.aspx, we have three mode here. We have design. If you select it, then the page gonna be shown to you as it's gonna be shown almost to the client and user. We have source, which you can see this HTML tags and all of these tags as a source of this file, and then you have split, which both of these windows gonna be shown to you. And then here in this toolbox section, you can see all of these standard server controls and the other server controls here that you can just select, double click, or drag and drop on your web form in order to use. And finally, we have this menu here, build. You can build your solution, you can run your solution, and you can just select this play icon here, and then your application gonna be compiled and run, and then you can see your page. Of course, it's empty now, so there's nothing inside of this page to be shown, but this is our page here. So we got familiar with the environment of Visual Studio a little bit more. We got to know about how we could create our application and project here, how we can add web forms to our project, and got familiar with these different modes and then toolbox. It was a great progress. And then you can just stop your application or project here, and then it's going to be returned to this edit mode again. Make sure to go through all of these parts by yourself as well to make sure that you understood them and you're able to do them on your own. Later, we're going to work with these controls. We're going to get familiar with control tags, work with their properties, work with them in code behind part, and then work with control events if they have any. The first server control that we're going to work with is this labels control. So we use label control in order to represent some text or values inside of our web page. And on this link, you can get familiar with all of the properties, methods, and events of this server control. And this is the tag to create a label. You can just copy paste this tag, or you can just drag and drop label from toolbox. As you can see here, the type is label, and this is the ID that we define for server controls in order to have access to them later in our code behind side, and it's easier to have access to those controls by having these names. We can define text and then enter some values as our text property, and we definitely have to mention this run at server for each server control. Then we will be able to have access to them from back end and then different parts. So let's work with this label control. We're going to place a label in the page and then work with all of these properties and work with in the code behind section as well. So first of all, let's put one label control here. So I double click here, and now I have this label control added here for me. As you can see here, text is labeled, so I'm gonna replace it to this cliche as a hello world here. Now if I go to the design part, design mode here, the label is hello world. And also we have this properties window here that if I right click, or if I select this properties, and then all of the properties of this label are going to be mentioned here. So you can change the text of this label from this property window here. Now I change it here, and then the change got affected here, or you can just change it from source file. So they are the places that you can use to change the values. And also you can change the ID for this label. You can select whatever name you want for this label. And then also we have this associate control ID for labels controls that you can select the other controls. For instance, you have a form and there are text box, and then in front of each label there's a text box that you can enter, for instance, first name, last name, address, email, the other information. So when you select those other server controls as associate control ID for this label, which we later are going to use in our sample order page, by clicking on those labels, then automatically you will be redirected to that text file, and then your visitors can easily enter their values inside of those text boxes. And then we have some appearance properties. You can define the font, the color of that text by selecting from this window or entering the HTML code for that color as a RGB code or hex code. The size of your text being shown in the side of this label. So here are also some practical properties to use with this label control. And also we have this tooltip property. Let's see how it can be used. Right, and now if I run my project and if I move my mouse over this label, you can see that tooltip that I inserted inside of that property. And when I inserted that tooltip here, you can see that it automatically added here. So you can also mention this tooltip property here, and inside it, these double quotations, you can insert the values. And finally, for properties, we have this visible property, which is quite important. Now that you can see that I set the visible property as false, and if I run my project, then the label will not be shown to the user because the visible is false. Yes, there is no label here. And also, if I want to have access on the code behind section, this is the function that when the page is being loaded, then it's the first part that is being run and compiled. So I'm going to use this ID here, and then let me first stop the application, and then use this text property, and then this is the new value. So although this label has this value as hello world 2, when I set the new value here and when I run my application, then this is the new value that has been sent to this label control. Oh, I set the visible part still to false, so let's first just set it to true. I can just remove this part here and then run my application, and then now we can see the label control with new value. This is the new value. And also you can set the visible on the back end to true and false from code behind section as well. gonna set it to false, and then you see that the label control will not be shown to the user as well. So we got to use this label control on our application on the web form page, and then on the code behind section we were able to work with this server control as well. The next server control that we're going to be familiar with is this button control. So we use button to display a push button control on the web page. And here's also a link that you can see all of the properties, methods, and events of this server control. And this is a tag that we have to use if we want to add and place one button server control inside of our web form. So the type is button, and then the ID, whatever name you want to have for that button control, and then run at server, and then the text that's going to be placed on top of this button. So we're going to place the button in a page and then work with its property in the design section, ID, text, appearance properties, tooltip, visible, and then work with the control and the code behind section. So let's just open again that web form that we created. So I'm going to place one button here. You can just double click on it or just drag it and drop it whenever I want. So we have button, and I'm gonna change the name to button submit, and then change the text to submit as well. And just like that label control, you can see here all of these values has been changed. The text property, now we have submit, and the ID is button submit. So you can also change the visible property to true or false. It's the same just like that label control that we work with, and also this appearance controls. For instance, just let's change and let's see how it works here. So I change it to the fore color to red, just as an example. Let's see what's the difference. So now the color of the text for submit is now red. And also this tooltip property is the same. And let's work with this server control, button server control on the code behind section, and then see what is this click event and what can we can do with this control. So I'm going to stop this application, and then I'm going to remove this label text visible to false. I'm going to go to this design section, and I can find my button here. So I'm going to put it here in this other line, and I'm going to double click on my button. When I double click on my button, you can see here now we have this onClick event here. So one event has been added to our button submit click, and now here is also button submit click. So whenever my user is click on this button, these changes that I'm gonna place here are gonna be affected to my web form. So whenever my user click on that button, I'm gonna change the text of this label text to the button just got clicked. And now when I run my application, you can see that when you click on this button, the text of that label control is going to be changed to the new value that I just entered. Yes, the button just got clicked. If I press it again, it seems like it's the same, but the thing is the value is being changed, but since it's identical to the previous one, it seems like nothing is happening, but it's happening. So this button is really practical when you want to submit a form or work with this click event of this button submit. So make sure to understand it, make sure to do the same that we did here, and then we're going to use it a lot in the future. The next control that we're going to be familiar with is this bulleted list. So we can have items in this bulleted list, as you can see a little bit later. Here is the link that you can see all of the properties, methods, and events of this control. And this is the tag that we have to use in order to add one bulleted list in our web form. Still, we have this ID property, run at server, and for each item in this list, we have to have this list item here, the text for this list item, and then we have to close this bulleted list like this. So now we're going to work with this bulleted list and put it inside of a web form page, and then here are also the same properties that we worked earlier, and then we have this new add item part that we're going to work with. So I double click on this bulleted list from this toolbox list, and then the bulleted list has been added here. And when I go to the design section, I can just see my bulleted list here, and if I just click on this small button here, and then I can add more items. Now you can see I added 2 items in this bulleted list, and if you go to the source, you can also see that the changes has been affected here. Let's see if we can add one item on the code behind section. So if I press this button, the text of this label going to be changed, and also in this bulleted list control, I'm going to add one more item. Let's see if we are able to do that. So when I run my application, I already have 2 items here, and when I press submit, this text has been changed, and now the item 3 has been added to this bulleted list. And also let's see that we can count the number of items inside of this bulleted list. So I'm going to use this code here. Application first. So here is going to be a number returned to me, and by using dot to a string, the type of this value going to be converted to a string. Unfortunately, I cannot go through all of these programming tips here, so you can also search online to see some of them, because the subject of this course is ASP.NET Web Forms, and they are C# programming subjects, and if we cover them, then this course is going to be divided into 2 separate courses. But it's good to be familiar with them, especially in these tutorial videos, and then if you want to gain more knowledge, then you can easily search online and find it out for yourself. So if you learn more material and more knowledge in C# programming, then you definitely can make more powerful applications. So now when I press this submit button, there are 2 items here, but it's because when I pass this number to this text box, I still didn't on that time didn't add this new item there. So after that, it's going to be 3 items. So that's the reason that here in this label, number 2 going to be shown to me. The next server control that we're going to work with is this checkbox control. So we use checkbox to create a checkbox control and allows the user to switch between a true or false state according to an item that we're gonna give to the user to select if it's like true or false. And here's also a link for properties, methods, and events of this checkbox control. And this is the tag that we have to use if we want to insert a checkbox inside of our web form. So the type of server control is checkbox. The ID is whatever we select here. And then auto postback is a property that it's gonna send the state to the application if whatever happens and the state of this control changes. If we select as true, then when changes are affected, then we're gonna send a request to application. But if we select as false, or if we don't mention this property, then by changing the state, nothing gonna happen. Later we're gonna work with the example and more deeply understand what's the purpose of having this property. And then the text for that checkbox, if the align is right or left, if it's already checked or not, and if you want to have a event when that server control has been checked, and then this run at server. So let's place a checkbox in a page and then work with all of these properties, and also on the code behind section, let's work with it. So I'm gonna insert one checkbox inside of this page here. So this is a checkbox that I inserted here, and this is the ID of that checkbox, and let's insert some value as a text. So if I run the application now, my checkbox has been added to this page now. You can see it here. There it is. You can just select it and unselect it. So if you already set the value to check, if I stop this application here and then set the property to check true, then when you run this application and when your page is being loaded, then by default that checkbox is being checked before. That's it here. And also now let's set that auto postback property to true. You can also do this, or just in the design section, if you select your control here and then find this behavior auto postback false, you can just double click or select from here, change the value, and then here you can also see that's been changed. So now if I run this application, here you can see that if I change the state of this checkbox, then a request is going to be sent to our application. See, it goes and comes back. But before that auto postback was true, then nothing would be happening or something. All right. And here are also other properties that we earlier worked with them. Let's work with this enable one as an example here. So if you set the property enable to false, then when you run them, and then when you want to select or check or uncheck this control, then nothing will happen. Oh, something happened. Let's see. Okay, enable is true. By default is true. So if we change it to false, then nothing will happen. So when the enable is true, then you can modify it, but when it's not, as you can see here, now it's in gray color. And now I cannot select it if I press on it. Yeah. And also now let's change the status on the code behind. Here when we move this enable part, and then this check property, I'm going to remove that, so already it's unchecked. So if I press this submit button, the third task that I'm gonna assign to this button would be this checkbox one be checked to true. Right. So first the text value will be changed, and then another item will be added here, and then this checkbox will be checked. Let's see. So we were able to work with this checkbox from this code behind section as well. And also we can easily change the text value as well by just putting checkbox one.text equal to whatever we want. And after that we have this checkbox list. The difference between checkbox and checkbox list is that in this list we can insert as many checkbox as we want inside of this checkbox list. And here is also some properties, methods, and events. And also this is the tag that we have to use if we want to have this checkbox list. We have the ID, run at server, and then for each checkbox we have to insert this line of code here for the text name and value name. So let's work with this checkbox list now. I'm going to insert one checkbox list here. And as usual, you can see if I press this small button and then there's this edit items. Here I can insert a checkbox here. So I added two checkbox here. Now you can see it here. And also if I go through these properties, there are also so many familiar properties. And then some other different ones as well. So here this repeat direction. So now it's vertical, and if I change it to horizontal, then direction will be like this. And here also you can modify the items here, just like that small button that we used. So if you look at the source code, now we have these two lines of codes here, and then you can have access to the code behind section as well, just like working with this checkbox here. And also there is one other thing which is very practical to use. Let's use this sample code in order to see how many items has been selected inside of this checkbox. So I'm going to remove all of these 3 lines of code, and then I'm going to get the ID of this checkbox list here. So here there's a for each loop here. So for each item in this checkbox list, it's going to check if that item has been selected or not. Text value to this selected value. Now if I run this project, an error going to be shown here, and let's see what's the reason behind it. Alright, so let me first define it here. Some values. So now if I run this application here, you can see that what are the items that have been checked. So there are two items here. First, let's not check any of them. So there's no value for this label. If I check only item 1, then value 1, which is the value of this item 1, going to be shown here. If I check this only item 2, value 2. And if I check both of them, it's going to be value 1, value 2, probably. No. Let's see why. All right. Okay. So we're gonna put selected value here and then add the other value to it. So in this way, when this line of code has been executed, it's going to replace the whole values inside of this selected value to that item value. But if we use this, then the default previous value going to be placed here and then new item value here. So in this way, if we select both of them, then the value of both of the items is going to be shown to us, probably. But let's see. So if I only select one, value 1, and if I select 2, value 1, value 2. Just clear here a little bit. All right. The next server control we're going to work with is this drop-down list. You may use this drop-down list server control when you have a variety of items and then the user can select only one of them among all of these items. Here in this link you can get familiar with the properties, methods and events of this server control. And also here's a tag that we have to use if you want to place a drop-down list control inside of our web form page. So as you can see here, the type of this server control is drop-down list. We can select the ID and later have access with this ID with this server control and then run at server. And for each item inside of this drop-down list, we have to write one line like this. So the text that's going to be shown to the user is this part, and then the value that on the back end side we can work with it can be mentioned here. And we're going to place a drop-down list in the page and then work with it on the design section and code behind section. So let's add one drop-down list control at the end of this page. So from toolbox, I'm going to double click on this drop-down list. And then when I select it, you can see here there's this edit items that I can add some items here. Item 1, and then the value is 1. Item 2, the value gonna be 2. And then item 3 also, and the value gonna be 3. So now I have 3 items inside of this drop-down list. And if I click on it and then go to this properties window, there are also so many familiar properties that earlier we worked with. For instance, this auto post back exactly like that checkbox. If someone select the item, then a request is going to be sent to the server, and then programmatically the developer can write some line of codes. And then we have this tooltip that we work with, the visible property that we already are familiar with. Also, we can add items from this part as well and then change the ID to whatever we want. So many of them are familiar. And if I run this application, then you can see this drop-down list at the bottom of the page. And here are all the items that we can select. So let's also work with the properties on the code behind as well. For instance, I would like to see if I press the submit button, which item I selected. So I remove all of this code here and then set the text value of this label to drop-down list item 1, drop-down list 1, and then selected value. So if you remember, we have item 1, item 2, item 3, and for item 1 the value is 1, item 2 is 2, and item 3 is 3. So I select item 3, and when I press submit, the text value will be 3. If I select item 1, the value is going to be 1. Yeah. So that's how you can work with these values here. And also you can, just like the previous example, you can programmatically add some items inside of this drop-down list. So when I press this submit button, click it, and then the value of this text property of label text is going to be changed, and then one other item as item 4 will be added to this drop-down list. So now item 1 is selected by default. The value is going to be 1, and then there's this item 4 added at the end of this drop-down list. Also, there are some similar properties that earlier we worked with. The next control we're going to work with is this file upload control. So we use file upload control in order to upload a file to our web server. And in this link you can see the properties, methods, and events of this control. And also here is a tag that we have to use if we want to place a file upload control inside of our web form. Here you can see the type is file upload. We can have an ID for this file upload, and then also we have to add one button that when we select a file and then we click on this button, then the file being uploaded to our server. So we're going to place a file upload in a page and then work with its properties and then see how we can upload a file. So first of all, let's add one file upload server control here. This is the file upload server control, and then I double clicked on it, and then here it is. So if I run the application now, you can see that the control is there on the page. So now if I press choose file, then I can select some file. But now let's write some lines of code for this click event of this button, that whenever we selected the file and then press this button, then the file being uploaded to our application. Here in this slide, there are some sample code that you can also use. So I copy paste the code here, and now I can modify it. first of all, I have to correctly enter the right ID of this file upload control. The next server control we're going to work with is this hidden field server control. So hidden field can be used if you want to put some values, information inside of your web form, and user does not see that value and the value of this hidden field. And later in your application, you can use it whenever you want it. And here in this link, you can see the properties, methods, and events of this hidden field control. And this tag has to be used in order to you be able to put a hidden field control inside of your web form. So the type is hidden field. We can select ID for it and then run at server and some values for it. So here also, after placing a hidden field in a page, these are the properties that we can work with in the design and code behind section. So let's first insert one hidden field here at the end of this page. So I select this toolbox, and from a standard section, there is this hidden field server control. So if I right click, if I select it, and then the property section, there's also this visible and value here. I can select some value as value 1 here, and then when I run this application and when I go to the source code, you can see that the value is not being shown to us, but if you go to source code, then we can find our hidden field there. Here is our hidden field here, and the value is value 1. And also we can have access to that value when we click on this button, set a new value if you wanted to. But first I'm gonna set this label text property to hidden field 1 dot value. And now if I run this application and then press that button, then you can see that the value of that label text value will be the value of the hidden field, which is value 1. And also if you want to change it on the back end part, we can just set the value to whatever new value that we are looking for. Always make sure that you place the value and text inside of these double quotations. Otherwise, the compiler will think that it's the name of a variable. So now when I press this button, now the value 1 will be there, and then if I go to the page source, I can see now the value of this hidden field is now value 2. So in that way, I was able to programmatically change the value of this hidden field control. The next server control is hyperlink. We select and use hyperlink when we want to put a link inside of our web page and point it to other links if it's inside of our application, or point it to some website or somewhere. And here in this link you can see all of the properties, methods, and events of this control. And here is the tag that we have to use if we want to place a hyperlink inside of our web form. So the type is hyperlink, ID, run at server, and then that URL that we are looking for. So let's see that if we are able to work with this control in the design section and code behind section. So first of all, I will select one hyperlink control and place it here. And if I click on it, and then by this properties section, there are some properties that some of them are familiar to us. So the ones that are practical, here is this text part, which I will write Microsoft, and then the navigate URL, I will point it out to http://microsoft.com. So if I run this application now, and if I press on this hyperlink, I will be redirected to Microsoft's website. All right. And one other thing is good to know for when we want to work with this control is this target property. There are different types for selecting target, but if you want, sometimes we want not users to be somehow redirected to somewhere and then we lose them. So we're gonna select this underline blank as a target here, and whenever our users click on our hyperlinks, a new tab will be opened, and then they're gonna stay in our page here. So when I press it now, the new tab will be open for Microsoft website, and I'm still in this page as well, comparing to the other previous method that this page got directed to other new link. And also you can change the navigate URL value on the code behind section. So here I mentioned the ID of this hyperlink control, and then for navigate URL I will select hclass.com. So now when this page is being opened, if I press on this hyperlink, a new tab will be open for Microsoft, and now if I press this submit button, now probably the link has been changed to techclass.co, as you can see here. The next server control we're going to get familiar with is this image control. We use image control whenever we want to put an image file in a web page. And here is the properties, methods, and events of image control that you can read and get familiar with. And this is a tag that whenever we want to insert an image control inside of a web form, we have to use. So the type is image, and then just like any other controls, we're gonna have ID, and then run at server, and then image URL property, and the value has to be the location of the image that we're gonna use. We're gonna place an image control in a page, and then work with properties in design and code behind section. As you can see here, also there are some familiar properties. Image URL is new, height and width is new, so we're going to get familiar with them and work with them as well. So on the bottom of this page, I'm gonna place one image control, and when I click on it, then there are properties that you can see here. If you right click on your application and then select add and then new folder, we're going to create a folder and name it as images, and then right click on your folder and then add and then existing item, and then you can find one image in your hard drive somewhere, and then that image is going to be added to this folder. And then if you click on this image control and then select properties, in this image URL you can select the image that you just added to your application. And also if you click on your image again, then you can change the height and width of this image. And also on the code behind, you can also change the image URL and the size of this image, or if that image being visible, or the visible being set to true or false. So I'm gonna change the visibility of this image to false whenever I hit this button on my application. So if I run my application now and if I press on that button, and then the image will be disappeared. The visible will be set to false now. And now the image is gone. And also you can change the URL of that image by setting that property of image URL to whatever you're looking for. And then enter that new URL here. And the next control is image button, which is completely similar to button control that we earlier worked with. And the main difference is that instead of showing a default button to the user, you're allowed to insert an image as that button, and then when your user and your client press and click on that image, it will act like a button for you. And in this link you can read more about the properties, methods, and events of this control. And as you can see, the difference in this image button tag is this image here. So before that we had button, and now this is image button. You still have ID, run at server, and then the URL of that image that you would like to show to the user, and then on click event button. And also the properties are the same. Now let's remove this image now, and then I'm gonna add one image button here, and then set the URL of that image URL property to that button here. And if I double click on this image, then I can write some lines of code for this click event of this button. And now that I deleted that image control, I need to get rid of this line because that image is not there anymore. That was the main reason of that error message that you encounter. So now if I press this, if I click on this image, you can see here the label text will be different. Image button got clicked. So it exactly acts like a button for us. And also we have another control, which is link button, exactly similar to button and image button, but the difference is instead of having a default button or image button, we can have a link button and insert some text, and then when the user clicked on this text, then it acts like a button. We can read about the properties, methods, and events of this control on this link. And also here is the tag that we have to use if you want to place a link button here. So the difference is this link part, link button, and then this text activate here, or whatever text you would like to show to the user. Also the properties are the same. The way you are working with it is the same, and you can also place your link button from this toolbox menu here. There it is. And if you double click on it, then here you can write lines of code that you're looking for. The next control is list box. So list box, as you can read here, represent a list box control that allows single or multiple item selection. And here in this link, you can read about the properties, methods, and events of this list box control. And here is the tag that we have to use if we want to place the list box control in our web form. So the type is list box. We have ID, run at server, and then for each item we have to write this line of code. List item, the text, the value, and then if you want one of them to be selected or some of them, then we can set this selected property to true. So let's place the list box in a page and then work with its property in design and code behind section. I'm going to remove some of these controls here just to make some room. So here is this list box, and if I double click on it, it will be appear here, and then just like any other controls that had items, here also in this edit items link, you can insert the items that you're looking for. Also, you can set the rows here, the number of the rows. And if you set the auto post back to false and true, and here is also a very important property for this control, selection mode. So you can select here if the user can select a single item or multiple item. Now let's see what's the difference between them. So now that I selected single, if I run this application now on this page, let's see if I'm allowed to select multiple choices or not. So now I select item 1, item 3. So now you can see that it changes. Even if I press shift or control, doesn't matter. So that's the difference between single, and now let's try multiple. Now that I select multiple and then run this application, so if I just click on the items here item 1, item 3. But if I press Control, you can see that you're allowed to select multiple items. It's a little bit hard for user to understand. Maybe you need to somewhere mention that you have to press Control. But this control has the ability to have the multiple selection choice for the user. And just like the other similar controls, you can add item on the code behind part, and then see what items has been selected and count the number of selected items as well, just like the previous examples that we had. The next item and the next control we're going to be familiar with is this literal control. Literal represent HTML elements, text, and any other strings in an ASP.NET page that do not require processing on the server. Here is the properties, methods, and events list available on this link that you may get more familiar with. And here is the tag that you have to use if you want to place literal on your page. So the type is literal, we have ID, run at server, some text we are looking for. It's really similar to label, but has some more functionality as well. It also has the property of text here. You can insert HTML code inside of it or regular text strings as well. And then we have panel server control. Panel server control represents control that acts as a container for other controls. And here in this link you can read more about the properties, methods, and events. So sometimes you would like to place other controls as a group and then set the visibility of them all together. So this panel server control can come handy. Here's the tag that you have to use if you want to place a panel control inside of your form, inside of your rep form. So the type is panel, and then it has ID, and then run at server. So let's see if we are able to place a panel inside of our page and work with it. Also, there are some similar and familiar controls as well, like visible, width, height, and enabled appearance. So I'm going to place a panel server control here in this page. And now I'm able to write inside of it, as you can see here, or also place these other controls inside of it. So now I inserted all of these three controls inside of this panel 1. And when I press my button here, I would like to set the visibility of this panel to false. So now that I did that, if I run my application and if I press on that button, you can see that all of those controls inside of that panel will be disappeared. So it's really handy when it comes to, for instance, a user would like to submit a form, and then after the processing the information of that form, then all of the elements be gone and then show a successful message to user. So you can use this panel control and put all of these elements of the form inside of that panel, and then on the other panel as a panel successful or panel done, then show the successful and done message to the user. The next server control is placeholder, but we will fully work with it when we got familiar with master pages and then understand why we are using these placeholders. Here in this link you can read more about the properties, methods, and events, and also here's a tag that later we will use if you want to use this placeholder control. And the next control we're going to work with is this radio button control. Radio button is a control that whenever you have multiple choices, but the user can select only one among them. And here in this link you can read more about the properties, methods, and events of this radio button control. And here is the tag that if you want to place a radio button inside of our web form, we can use it. So the type is radio button, ID, run at server, the text we are looking for to show to user. If you want to group this radio button, for instance, imagine we have different choices for courses. We set the group name to courses, and then all of these radio buttons that have group name courses will act like a group of radio buttons. So if you select one of them, the other will be unselect, and it's going to be like that. If you have this auto post back property and then unchecked changed. So let's place a radio button inside of our page and let's see if we can work with it and in the design and code behind section. I'm going to put this label in its place where it was and then remove these other properties, remove these other controls here. I'm going to place one radio button here. So having one radio button is kind of pointless because if a user click on it, then it will stay the same. It cannot be unclicked or unchecked. Course 1. Here in this text align, then the outline of this radio button will be changed. Usually the radio button is on the left side of this control. So now that I have only one radio button, because we remove other controls, now we have error, so I need to remove this line of code here. So now that I have only one, when I select it, there is no way to unselect it. But if I place two, then see what will happen. I'm going to add one more radio button here and then set the text to course 2 and then find this group name, courses, and then for the first one also set it to courses. And now when I run my application, you can see that if you select one of them, the other one will be unselect, and then if you select the other one, yeah, like that. So by grouping them like that, then this ability will be placed for them. And also by this checked property, you can check if they are checked or not. So let's write here some lines of code. We have radio button 1 dot checked. So if this first one got checked, I will set the text value of that label to something. And then if the other one got selected, then course 2 got selected. So let's see. So if both of them are unchecked now, and if I press submit button, nothing will be changed because none of them got selected. And now that I select course 1 and press submit, course 1 got selected. If I press it again course 1 got selected, and now if I change it to course 2, then course 2 got selected. So that's how you can see which of these radio buttons got checked. And the next one is radio button list. And the difference between radio button and radio button list is that radio button list contains many radio buttons. So you don't need to set a group name, they're already a group. And here in this link you can read more about the properties, methods, and events of this radio button list. And here is also the tag that we have to use if you want to place a radio button list inside of our web form. Here you have to mention these single radio buttons like that. And let's place a radio button list inside of our page, and let's see if we can work with it in design and code behind section. So I'm going to copy paste this code here. Place it at the bottom of my page. Something happened. Let's see. Okay. Then I copy pasted. These double quotations are not the one that we are looking for because we converted from PowerPoint. Yeah, now they are there. Let's name it to something easier to have access to. Now that I press this button, then I'm going to set the label text value, text property to the value of this selected radio button from this list. Let's see if we are able to do that. So now I didn't select any of them. When I press it, the value will be null. If I select one of them, I guess it's going to be 4. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is the value of this text. The next server control we're going to work with is TextBox. If you want to get some values and strings from user, we use TextBox and place them inside of our page. Here in this link you can find out more about the properties, methods, and events of this TextBox control. Here's the tag that we have to use if you want to place the text box inside of our web form. The type is TextBox, the ID is whatever we want to refer it to, and then if we want to insert some text as the default text, and then user will be able to change it or not, then run the server. To work with, we're going to place the text box in the page and then work with its properties in design and code behind section. So at the end of this page, I'm going to insert one text box here. If I right click on it and select properties, if I select on it and if I select properties, there are many other properties you can see. Many of them are familiar and similar. The ones that are new is this text mode. So if you have this single line, it's gonna be shown to us as a single line text box. If it's and there are like so many other choices, but these three are the main and primary ones. For instance, if you have this multi-line, it's going to be bigger, so the user can insert values in multi-line order. And if we select this password, then we can receive password values from user, and then instead of the characters and letters of the text that user gonna enter, then it's gonna be star or secret sign, as you can see here. So that's because of this text mode password that we selected. And now if I turn it back to single line and then set this max length as like 5, then you can see that the user cannot enter text which is the length is bigger than 5 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I cannot enter any more letters and characters. That was also a new property for this control here. Right. Now I want to write a line of code that whenever I press this button, the value and the text inside of this text box being stored in this label. So when I run my application and then write some text inside of that text box, this is coming from the text box. And now if I press submit, then you can see here the label text gonna be changed to this is coming from the text box. No, this one shouldn't be here, obviously. And the others are kind of similar to the previous controls as well, like this visible, read-only. Oh, this one is also new. So if we set the property of a text box as read-only, then the user cannot enter values inside of it. So we select as a read-only and then have some default text here. And now that I run this application, you can see that I'm not able to select this text box and then enter value inside of it. Now I cannot do that because that read only property has been set to true. That was the reason. And also we have this rows number, and if I select it as a multi-line, then you can see here that I can change the number of rows for this control. That was also different. That was also new and different for this control. The size of the control can be determined from this width and height property here. And here also some other controls in this standard server controls, which we rarely use in our applications, and now you have the knowledge to search online and then be more familiar with each of them as well. Add rotator, calendar, image map, localize, substitution, table, view, and wizard. And in the lab session also you can create and open your ASP.NET project and create an order page and see if you're able to use all of these server controls at once by yourself. And here are also some links that you're able to find out more about these topics. So this was the end of introduction part of the material of this ASP.NET Web Forms course. And thank you for your consideration, and I hope you had a wonderful and nice class here as well. So see you on the advanced section of this course with the advanced material of the course.